Subscribe if you want stories that crawl under your skin, like the video if you feel the walls closing in, and comment where you think this ends, because inside Blackridge Federal, endings are never clean. The alarm didn't start loud. It began as a tremor, a low electronic hum vibrating through concrete, the kind guards were trained to ignore for half a second too long. In that half second, Tier C froze. Conversations died mid-sentence. Metal trays hovered in the air. Every inmate felt it at once, the prison inhaling. Then the siren tore open the silence. Red lights washed the corridor in pulses. Doors slammed automatically, a chain reaction of steel echoing down the block like thunder trapped indoors. Officers shouted codes over their radios, voices overlapping, urgent and clipped. Control to all units, breach protocol. Repeat, breach protocol. Officer Daniel Reyes was closest to the blind corridor when it happened. Nobody liked that hallway. It was a narrow stretch between camera zones, a leftover flaw from an expansion 20 years earlier. Engineers had sworn it was harmless. Administrators called it insignificant. Guards called it cursed. Reyes reached the corridor just as two officers dragged an inmate out, wrists zip-tied, face pale but calm. Too calm. The man's name was Victor Hale, quiet, disciplined, serving 3 decades for crimes no one on the tier talked about out loud. Hale didn't fight. He didn't shout. He stared past Reyes, eyes fixed on something behind him. Reyes turned. Cell C-17 stood open. That was impossible. Blackridge was designed so no cell opened without triple confirmation. Central control, floor officer, automated log. Yet the door hung wide, swaying slightly as if someone had just walked through. Inside, the bunk was perfectly made. The sink was dry. On the pillow sat a folded uniform, arranged like a body still sleeping beneath it. For a moment, no one spoke. "Where's the occupant?" Reyes asked. The sergeant checked his tablet, hands shaking. C-17, inmate Marcus Venn. Still registered inside. But Marcus Venn wasn't there. The search locked the prison down within seconds. Inmates were forced to their knees. Guards swept cells with mechanical precision. Boots hammered the floors. Radios hissed non-stop updates. Every exit remained sealed. Every tower reported negative movement. According to the system, no one had left, which meant Venn was still inside. And Blackridge had just lost a man in a building designed to make disappearance impossible. Warden Eliza Crow arrived 10 minutes later, her expression carved from stone. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to. The silence around her did the work. Crow studied the blind corridor like it had personally insulted her. "This prison," she said quietly, "does not misplace inmates." Investigators combed the hallway. No broken panels. No forced locks. No blood. Nothing dramatic. Just a scuff mark near the wall, a faint streak, almost invisible, like someone had brushed past carrying weight. Then they checked the cameras. Every feed showed routine order. Inmates walking. Guards patrolling. Doors secured. When they reached the timestamp for C-17, the footage flickered. Not cut. Not erased. Flickered. A static ripple passed over the screen for exactly 3 seconds. 3 seconds where Marcus Venn ceased to exist. The tech team replayed it frame by frame. In the distortion, a shadow moved against the wall of the blind corridor. Not running. Not scrambling. Walking with purpose. And he wasn't alone. 2 silhouettes crossed that corridor during the glitch. One matched Venn's build. The other wore a guard's uniform. The room turned cold. Crow stared at the screen. "Identify the officer." No badge number appeared. The figure's shoulder was angled just enough to hide it. But the posture was familiar, relaxed, confident, like someone who knew the cameras as well as the people who installed them. Someone inside Blackridge had escorted an inmate through the one place the prison couldn't fully see. Reyes felt it then, the shift in the air. Guards eyeing each other. Radios going quiet. Trust collapsing in real time. In a facility built on surveillance, the most dangerous thing wasn't an escaped prisoner. It was doubt. They sealed the corridor and pulled every staff log from the last 24 hours. One entry stood out. A manual override request filed at the exact moment of the glitch, authorized from a terminal that should have been inactive. The terminal belonged to internal security. Crow read the name attached to the authorization, and for the first time since the alarm, her composure cracked. Because the officer who signed that override had been standing beside her during the lockdown. And when they turned to question him, his post was empty. His radio lay on the desk, still warm. But when they checked the security feed from the blind corridor, the prisoner wasn't the only one who had vanished. By morning, Blackridge felt different. Not louder. Not chaotic. Worse. Quiet in a way that suggested everyone was listening. The missing officer's name spread through the prison before the official memo did. Lieutenant Aaron Pike, 15 years inside Blackridge, spotless record, trusted with internal security. The kind of man rookies followed and veterans respected. Now his desk sat sealed behind yellow tape, his coffee still half full, a thin film forming on the surface like time itself refused to move forward. Warden Crow ordered a full staff audit. No one left. No one entered. The prison became its own quarantine zone. Guards were searched like inmates. Lockers opened. Phones confiscated. Every conversation felt monitored, every glance suspicious. And still, Marcus Venn was nowhere. Rumors grew faster than facts. Some inmates whispered that Venn had found a tunnel. Others claimed he'd been recruited, lifted out by people with power far beyond the walls. The most dangerous rumor was the simplest, that Blackridge wasn't as controlled as it pretended to be. Reyes couldn't shake the image of the flickering camera. Two shadows crossing a space that wasn't supposed to matter. He volunteered for corridor duty, standing watch over the sealed stretch of concrete like it might confess if stared at long enough. It didn't. But he started noticing patterns. Every guard passed that corridor differently. Some sped up. Some refused to look inside. Others lingered, just a second too long, eyes tracing the walls. Fear had a rhythm, and it echoed there. Internal investigators arrived from outside the facility by noon. They wore neutral suits instead of uniforms, which made them look alien against the gray steel environment. Their lead investigator, Mara Keene, moved with unsettling calm. She asked short questions and waited through long silences, letting people fill them with their own guilt. When Keene reviewed Pike's records, she didn't focus on the night of the disappearance. She went back months. Financial statements. Shift trades. Maintenance requests. And there it was. A maintenance ticket filed repeatedly for the blind corridor. Always minor. Always dismissed. Lighting flickers. Sensor lag. Cosmetic cracks in the wall. Each complaint signed off by Pike. Reyes watched her face as she connected the dots. No surprise. Just confirmation. He was mapping it, she said softly. They reopened the corridor with a forensic team. The walls were scanned, tapped, measured. 4 hours. Nothing. Just reinforced concrete layered over older concrete, like the prison had grown skin over scars. Then a technician stopped. "There's a cavity," he said. "Not a tunnel. Not a hole big enough to crawl through. A hollow space running parallel to the corridor, hidden between original structure and later expansion. A forgotten artery in the building's skeleton. They drilled a camera through. The feed revealed a narrow service passage filled with dust and old wiring. And footprints. Fresh ones. The passage led somewhere. Crow ordered a controlled entry. Reyes joined the team crawling into the dark. The air inside tasted stale, untouched for years until recently. Their lights cut thin tunnels through the dust. Every movement echoed like a whisper amplified. They found the first sign 20 meters in. A folded uniform. Guard gray. Lieutenant stripes. Pikes. Neatly placed against the wall, like an offering. No struggle. No panic. Just absence. Further in, the passage opened into a maintenance chamber that didn't exist on any current blueprint. Old schematics painted the walls, faded diagrams of Blackridge from before the expansion. Someone had been living there. A blanket. Food wrappers. A battery-powered lantern still warm. And scratched into the concrete, over and over, one phrase. "Blind spots are doors." Keene crouched beside the writing, tracing it without touching. This wasn't just an escape, she murmured. This was research. Reyes felt the prison pressing in above them, thousands of tons of concrete hiding secrets in its seams. If this chamber existed, how many more did? How many spaces had been forgotten because everyone trusted the blueprint more than the building? A radio crackled. Control to search team. We have movement on Tier C. Possible disturbance. The team froze. Then another voice cut in, shaky. Inmates are chanting. They're saying a name. Whose name? Crow demanded. A pause. Ven. They're chanting Ven. The sound traveled even down in the chamber, a distant vibration, rhythmic, unified. Not a riot. Not yet. Something colder. Organized. Reyes realized what terrified him most. Ven hadn't just escaped. He was still inside Blackridge, and somehow everyone else knew it. Keen's light swept the far wall of the chamber and caught something metallic embedded in the concrete. A small recording device, wired directly into the old structure. Still active. She pressed play. Pike's voice filled the cramped space, steady but breathless. If you're hearing this, the blind spot worked. But it's bigger than we thought. He says the prison isn't the cage. It's the blueprint. And once you see the blueprint, you see every exit. The recording crackled. And he's not trying to leave alone. The lantern flickered. Above them, the chanting grew louder. And for the first time since Blackridge was built, the people in charge understood the truth. The prison didn't have one blind spot. It was built on them. The chanting didn't stop. It spread. By the time Reyes and the search team climbed out of the hidden chamber, the sound had taken over Tier C like a pulse. Inmates stood at their cell doors, hands wrapped around bars, voices unified in a low, steady rhythm. Ven. 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 Not shouting. Not raging. Certain. Warden Crow ordered an immediate lockdown, but the command felt hollow. The prison obeyed mechanically, doors sealed, lights shifted, alarms armed, yet the energy inside the walls had already changed. Blackridge wasn't controlling the inmates anymore. It was reacting to them. Investigator Keen rushed to central control. He's using the architecture, she said. The hidden passages, the dead zones. He mapped the prison better than the prison mapped itself. Crow stared at the camera grid. Hundreds of angles, overlapping feeds. Total surveillance. And still useless. He can't move without being seen. Keen shook her head. He doesn't have to move. He just has to convince everyone he already has. That was the real breach. Fear traveled faster than any inmate. Reports flooded in. A door found unlocked on Tier A. A tool missing from maintenance. A guard swore he saw someone step into a wall and disappear. Each claim fed the myth growing around Ven. He wasn't just a prisoner anymore. He was an idea, proof that Blackridge could be beaten. And ideas were harder to lock down than men. Reyes returned to the blind corridor. The sealed tape hung loose now, trampled by investigators. He stood in the exact spot where the camera had flickered. For the first time, he didn't look at the walls. He looked up. A hairline seemed cut across the ceiling. Invisible unless you were searching for it. He called it in. Maintenance brought a lift. The panel slid open with a reluctant groan, revealing a crawlspace barely wide enough for a body. Warm air drifted down. Someone had passed through recently. Reyes climbed. The crawlspace snaked above the corridor, branching like veins. He followed scuffed dust trails until they ended at a grated opening overlooking the prison chapel. The one place cameras were deliberately limited for privacy regulations. Rows of empty benches sat below in dim light. Except one wasn't empty. Marcus Ven sat in the front row, hands folded, calm as if attending a service only he could hear. Reyes froze. Ven looked up slowly, meeting his eyes through the grate. No panic. No rush to flee. Just recognition. "You found the map," Ven said quietly, his voice carrying in the still air. Reyes signaled for backup, but he couldn't look away. "It's over," he said. "There's nowhere left to go." Ven smiled faintly. "That's the mistake. You still think this was about leaving." Footsteps thundered outside the chapel. Guards surrounded the doors. Crow herself entered, weapon lowered but ready. "Marcus Venn," she said, steady. "Stand up." He did. No resistance. As they cuffed him, the chanting stopped across the prison. Not faded, stopped. Like a switch flipped. Silence crashed down so hard it rang in Reyes's ears. Keene stepped forward. "Why?" she asked. "You had a path out. You proved it." Venn looked around the chapel, at the concrete ribs of the ceiling, the sealed exits, the cameras just beyond sight. "I didn't want out," he said. "I wanted them to see." "See what?" Crow demanded. "That control is a story you tell yourselves. And stories fall apart when someone reads the fine print." He nodded toward the walls. "You built a perfect prison on imperfect plans. Every blind spot was a promise you'd never look too closely. I just looked." They escorted him away. No struggle. No triumph. Just a man walking calmly back into a cage he'd already escaped in every way that mattered. In the aftermath, Blackridge rewrote everything. Walls were opened. Passages sealed. Camera systems rebuilt from scratch. Committees formed. Reports filed. Officially, the incident was labeled contained. A security anomaly corrected. But Reyes kept thinking about the chanting. Weeks later, he worked a quiet night shift when a rookie approached him, pale. "Sir," the rookie whispered, "you should see this." Inside a newly renovated cell on Tier C, carved fresh into the concrete where paint hadn't dried yet, was a message. Not scratched in panic. Written carefully. "Blind spots are doors." Reyes felt the prison settle around him, heavy and endless. They had sealed the passages. They had caught the man. They had fixed the flaw. And still the words were back. Blackridge hadn't lost an inmate. It had inherited a lesson it couldn't erase. Somewhere in the tiers, a voice began humming softly. Then another joined. Not chanting. Not yet. Just enough to remind the walls that memory traveled faster than steel. And prisons, no matter how controlled, were built by humans. Which meant they would always have blind spots. If you enjoy this video, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe.